It would all have to be under my old name, and I did not want my old name out there. I didn't want people knowing that. I would sign up with my name Bear or Barrett, and they would block my account because they're like, your ID doesn't match. Like, I've gotten kicked out of eBay 7 times.
Hey everyone, I'm Michael Slater, a vintage reseller based in North Texas, and you're listening to Canned Heat. For today's episode, I sat down with my friend Barrett of Bandana Boy Vintage. Barrett is one of my favorite resellers to follow. He has an awesome website and he puts out great content every day. He's also trans, so during our conversation, we talk a lot about his experience as a trans person, specifically as it relates to the vintage community. I hope that whoever you are, you're able to listen to this conversation with an open mind and learn something, because I sure did. I first met you via social media toward the end of 2020. And real quick, I have to shout out your hilarious TikToks in which you read from your first grade composition book. Those are probably my favorite TikToks to exist.
Those are so funny. My twin sister has the exact same ones, and it's just like kindergarten and first grade illiteracy, and just says like, Jesus died on the cross. It make me sad. And it's just so funny.
I love it. That's like my favorite thing. But anyway, we met in person after that when we vended next to each other at Dated Faded Worn in Dallas. And it's been really awesome to get to know you. So how did you get into this business?
So originally, I had been taking a semester off of school, and through going from my first school to my second school, I had lost 80 pounds and none of my clothes had fit me. To preface this, I'm transgender, and Bandana Boy Vintage is a trans-owned business, which means that I was born female, identify as male, and have been on testosterone for 2 years. So if I say anything about being trans, that's what that means. So I had top surgery, which is a trans surgery, which is like a double mastectomy. And that changed the shape of my body a lot. So none of my t-shirts fit, and they were all thrifted. So I tried to sell them on Depop, and they sold super fast because they were all thrifted. And I was like, oh, dang, I didn't know I could do this.
What has it been like as a trans person in the vintage community?
It's super interesting because I am a trans person who has passing privilege, which is you don't quote unquote look trans, or you can't really tell that I'm trans by looking at me. And so people resellers will say transphobic stuff. And when the Dave Chappelle stuff was going around,
yeah,
they would make a lot of jokes about that. And
wow,
to me, and thinking that I'm cis, which is the opposite of trans, whatever. But yeah, mostly that, and just having little to no resources for trans people on the internet and trying to I've never seen anyone really do it. So
you and I have talked briefly about this sizing disparity for trans people and trans men specifically. So can you kind of educate us on what's going on there?
So most of the people that I serve, because I'm a trans-owned business, I mostly aim to serve the queer community and keep most of my clothes gender neutral. And so a lot of the people that I serve are either trans men, non-binary, trans masc presenting people, or masculine presenting lesbians. And so we all of those groups typically have born female. And so we have very smaller bodies, everything's built different biologically. And so where resellers hate mediums, nobody likes a medium.
It's so weird to me, and I've always said this. There are cis guys that wear mediums and smalls, but right. Everyone still thinks that XL is the cream of the crop. I'm certainly guilty of that too, because I've even thought before, like, oh man, too bad this is a medium. Like, too bad this is a small. Like, I've had those thoughts before too. So I'm sure there are biases within
Right.
myself, but I'll still get people in my booth who say, why do you have so many mediums? Why do you have so many smalls?
Yeah.
And I think it is important to be inclusive with size. And I don't know why a lot of resellers are so weird about it.
Because most of the time when people are talking about like size inclusion, we're always talking about bigger sizes.
Yeah, yeah.
That's where a lot of like fashion is lacking, and a lot of like fashion resources are lacking. But then you think specifically in vintage, you have to just think about your audience and your demographics. And like I think about like Skylar, the our friend, like the thrifty bitch.
Uh-huh.
She carries a lot of smaller sizes because she serves a lot of women. And
Right.
but for the bigger stuff, like more hype items, I do like to pick up XLs just because I know that like the trans guys that aren't necessarily interested in that aren't going to want to pay up for that. So I'm guilty of it myself.
Yeah. I think it's really important for other resellers to hear that it's a good thing to have a variety of sizes and having all XLs on your rack. I mean, it really does kind of limit your your selling potential, right? Because you've got people of all shapes and sizes that might come through your booth or might shop your online store. And so I think it is important for us to maybe reframe our thinking on the size issue.
Yeah, and I had to do that myself because at the beginning when I was selling, it was all of my old stuff. So I was a lot heavier. So it was XLs and larges. So I just kept picking those up because those are what was selling. But I just want to create that space that people have never had.
You know, I'm really sorry to hear that you've faced some discrimination, truly. But also you and I have talked about you've kind of found this subculture or this like smaller
Yes.
community of LGBTQ plus resellers. So tell me about that experience, and if you can, maybe highlight some of those resellers that we should know about.
Yeah, that was definitely kind of what got me started and got me more serious in the vintage game was Noodle Drips and Enrique at Fine and Dandy Archives. They were both like holding a Pride Month live. So we were just rounding up a bunch of LGBTQ plus resellers to just highlight us and give us more time and give us more opportunity to make money. And through that, I met some great people. I met like Danny, Itty Bitty Vintage Committee, and Casey Thrifts and Caps Lock Vintage and everyone like that. But it was just so cool because I'd never done a live before. And it's like Noodle Drips comes at you and you're like, oh my gosh, this person's like super well known. And
Yeah.
I was kind of starstruck. But yeah, now Nicole's like one of my best friends. And that was one of the best opportunities to find that little group. And we still talk. We have like a little vintage queers group message where we'll either send like our own stuff just to promo it with each other, or we'll unfortunately have a lot of screenshots of homophobic stories and comments of people and messages. So, but we
Yeah.
are all really supportive of each other, which is great.
Well, that's good that community exists, and I think it is important to call out the hate and discrimination when we see it.
It's so rampant in the vintage community just because people are just like broing around and just kind of saying whatever they want to just because they're like locker room talk kind of thing. And
Yeah.
that just becomes dangerous super easily.
Yeah. Well, you know, I hope that we can see more accountability with that. And it is encouraging to see that there are folks that will call it out when they see it.
Yeah, for sure. It's been like one of the biggest blessings to find these people because that's one of the things I really love about vintage is within the community, there are so many subcultures and so many subgenres where you can really just find your people. And it's really important to me to be able to like visibly be trans. I knew doing that I would cut down my audience a lot, no lie. Like being trans isn't so widely accepted these days. I mean, it's getting a lot better, but like I knew that I'd be cutting my demographic a little bit. And I really was willing to do that because I knew that even if I'd be losing sales from people who don't like necessarily like people talking about being trans, I'd still be helping people way more earnestly by doing that with trans people.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you did that because like you said, it's authentic, it's earnest, and you're going to end up with people that do accept you, and those are the people that you're going to want anyway. And I think that
Yeah, that's it.
it's also an encouragement to other LGBTQ plus folks that might want to find their way into
Yeah.
this business.
That's something that's super important, is just that kind of visibility. Like my friend Storm Ryan, he has a podcast for trans people by trans people called Brenemies. You can find them on Instagram at Brenemies or YouTube at Brenemies. But they, in their second or third episode, highlighted a couple of trans like people who own businesses, and I shockingly was put on that highlight, and like these people have like 200,000 followers. Like this was really great for me.
Wow.
He did that in order to show that being trans, you can make your own money, because employment with trans people is kind of really hard, especially if our documents don't match, which is very common. That's most of the reason actually why I kept doing vintage, even though I was just selling my old clothes. Like eventually those clothes ran out, and I kept doing it because my ID was still under my old name and I didn't want to out myself at work. So it's important for people to be able to make their own money and kind of not have to disclose that information to their employer.
Yeah. Well, I had never thought about that, I have to admit, but I think that is a blessing, and that there is this medium for folks.
And that's why what you said earlier, like those are the people that you want to have around, the positive people that are really reinforcing your identity and just like supporting you nonstop and your authenticity. Those are the people you want to have around. So like when I post an experience about being trans, like I'll just post random little encounters I have with people, or just things that people might not know or even think about. Like you said earlier, you like, that's not even something you'd think about. But I really like doing that and seeing like a loss of 16 followers every time, but then like a gain of 25, and they're all trans people.
Yeah. I'd imagine it would be a net positive over time. Like you said, at first, it's probably more difficult to find your people, but when you do, I think you've probably seen the growth from there.
When I talk about that, I'm not necessarily talking about like having a good amount of followers. Like I'm talking about reaching a large trans audience and like being visible, because something I've discovered recently is like when you don't see that representation of yourself, like you only view yourself and learn about yourself as other people's comments roll in. So like I didn't know what being trans was. I only knew the negative comments that people made about trans people. So when I finally figured out what it was, I was like, oh crap, I'm all those comments. But this kind of like, if I saw someone doing this, and if I had the great representation that we have now, it's like, so it's improved a lot. It's not amazing, but it's like super great. If I had that, like my internalization of being trans would be so different.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And to your point, I don't think it is maybe about the number of followers, but it's quality over quantity,
Yes. Like your TikTok, that original one that you made.
Oh yeah. Yeah, but it's true. I mean, there's value in finding community with it and not just mass appeal,
Exactly.
So what is something that most people don't know about you?
Something most people don't know about me is that I'm a twin. I have a twin sister.
Yeah.
And we just have fun facts about like being twins. Like our birthday is the same birthday as Elvis, and so we have an Elvis dedicated bathroom in our house. That's probably something no one knows about me.
That's a good one.
Who have come over to my house. But she's my best friend, which is great, and I just really like having her around. She vended with me my second time at Dated, Faded, and Worn, and she's more outgoing than I am, so that was really helpful.
That is helpful. I will admit, I've partnered with a couple people vending at events, and I'm very introverted. I'm not a pushy salesperson, and I don't say that with any kind of negative spirit. Like, you need a pushy salesperson sometimes,
Yeah.
to go and flag people down and sell them a t-shirt. Like, it's a very good way to be if you're going to sell in person. And I'm not that way.
I'm not
So,
either.
so I'm very thankful for extroverts and people that, you can kind of partner up with and use your strengths to your advantage.
That's why I was so excited about vending next. Like, I didn't even know that you and I were vending next to each other at first because I didn't know on the vendors app you could see
Oh, yeah.
everyone, like whose name is with what booth. I just knew that Skylar always had the end booth because it's just the best one for her.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna just go near her, but not like on top of her. I'm just gonna go like 3 down. And when I walked up and saw you and like saw Aaron, I was like, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
Familiarity.
That was actually my first event like that I ever vended at,
Really?
back in like 2019. And it's definitely like comforting to find people
Yeah.
It can be daunting if you're just there by yourself. I'm not too far away from remembering that feeling.
Yeah.
Switching gears a little bit, these are kind of the more rapid fire questions that just pertain to the nitty gritty of reselling.
Yes.
So how big is your death pile?
Oh God. My death pile is so big that I had to have a garage sale and price everything at like 25 cents because it was so big. That's how
Yeah.
big it was. And it's still there.
I think that happens to us all. Like, I'm about to do another trunk sale in the
I'm
next
so
couple
mad at the
weeks.
first one.
I just did one a couple months ago, and it felt so good to like get rid of pieces that I had been holding on to for way too long.
Yeah.
And
Picked out a QT.
yeah, yeah, I just pulled up to the QT and popped the trunk and sold things for like $1 or less on most things. If someone took like a big stack of stuff, I'd be like, yeah, $20.
Yeah, 20.
And I mean, I definitely took a loss on a lot of those pieces.
Yeah, me too.
Others were like from bins and rag houses, so it's kind of not really a loss, but it was just like a very freeing experience to just get rid of stuff that had been sitting there for so long. And everyone was so excited about it because they were getting pretty decent inventory on the low. So it was like, it felt good to just like pass stuff on and get it back in the ecosystem again rather than just sitting in my garage. So I definitely recommend that to any resellers listening. Like, I've even heard people say over the years, like, if you have a death pile, just take it all back to Goodwill. And like, sustainability wise, like,
I've done it.
I have too. And that is probably better than sitting on it for years and years. But everybody who resells has other resellers that follow them.
Right.
So I think a good idea is just before you go to Goodwill, make a free pile and just post the location on your story, and like, you'll be surprised how many people show up. Or even if you want to get some money back, dollar pile, $2 pile, whatever, and put a couple bangers in there that you've been sitting on for a bit. It definitely is a good feeling to kind of get things back out there.
Yeah, that's why I used to do this thing when I had like under 800 followers, when it was more manageable, to do free item week where with every purchase someone would get like, I mean, every single order would get a free t-shirt. So I just throw in a tee from my death pile, and people like really like that. And so I'd get a lot more orders that week. And I'd always see people at the end of vending events just have like $1 pile, their $5 one scratched to a one, scratched.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
Something that is kind of odd that people don't like is trading. I love trading. If you find someone who has kind of a similar amount of death pile stuff as you, trade those pieces. Like, that's like, I have a good friend who's Elijah at Wise Guy Vintage, and him and I, like, I'll post something from my death pile on my story and he'll be like, yo, trade me for this. I'm like, trade the thing he'll give me, he'll instantly sell. I'm like, that's perfect. He got what he wanted. I got what I wanted.
Yeah, that's another great idea. Okay, so what is your favorite piece that you've ever sold?
It's either my Mr. and Mrs. Smith, like the Smiths movie. You remember that?
Yeah.
Either that tee or my Mickey Mouse Tower of Terror, like the one that has you better take the stairs on the back or something like that.
Oh, yeah, that's a great one.
those were like two of my first tees when I had just signed up on Grailed and like just started selling on platforms. And I think I sold the Smiths one for 80, and I like ran into my mom. I was like, "Oh my God, this sold for $80. I got it for 2.99. What the heck?"
Yeah, that's a great feeling. Like the first like
Mm-hmm.
bigger flip that
And
you
markup.
have. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is your or what are your current ISOs?
I've been really getting into true vintage lately, and that's kind of what I wanted to do this year. And I've been kind of working to curate more true vintage. But I've been kind of hoarding FFA jackets, which is kind
Oh
of weird.
yeah. That's
And
those are super cool.
right, and I've seen people be like, I was in the FFA. This is so weird that these are like $100, but I think they are so cool. And those are always my ISOs now. But my biggest ISO right now is like a 40s or 50s Letterman cardigan sweater
Oh
that
yeah.
has the year on the pocket or something. But I love little cardigans now.
True vintage is definitely built different. Like it is
Yeah,
a whole
it is.
different lane, and
It is.
it's just so solid. Like it's so well built compared to even to 90s stuff that was still made in the USA. Like there's just something about the craftsmanship that is on another level.
That's what got me into it is like just the details and the tags. I'm a sucker for a good tag, and it's just like the intricacy and the like some of the tags were sparkly. I'm like they paid so much to get
Yeah.
that garment just a little better. But I've been listening to Drew Heifetz's podcast a lot, and he sells a lot of true vintage and like true denim. And he was just talking about how sustainable that business model is, just because it's a dwindling resource and it's built to last. And true vintage and true vintage denim is just it's a classic, and it's always going to be worth something. That's why I love true vintage hubs and like people that are specializing in true vintage, because it's always like a full curation and it's not just t-shirts. Like that's one of the things I just am not really about, is like full t-shirt pages, because like you want to put a full outfit together, and you can have a cool
Exactly.
t-shirt, but like people are going to see you and be like, "Where'd you get those pants?" And I'm like, "Oh, let's pull some pants and put them online."
Yeah. Another thing that the hype vintage world so often forgets is like style is not about one t-shirt. You
Mm-hmm.
can't just wear one
Right.
t-shirt and be done. Like you've got to have pants, you've got to have sneakers, you've got to have socks, you've got to have a belt. Like there's all these other pieces.
Yeah.
There's so much more than just t-shirts, and the hype vintage world would kind of have you believe otherwise, but you do have to be able to put together an entire outfit every day. Like why would you not want to invest in that other stuff too?
Right? To me, they look like cartoon characters sometimes, just because it's the same silhouette of the outfit. It's the same pants and shoes, and
Mhm.
it's a different like mega print t-shirt. And I'm like, okay, dokie, okay, I like that. Good style choice, buddy.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. Okay, so kind of on that note with ISOs, do you consider yourself more of a collector or a seller?
It depends what category we're talking about. Like, I just collect the weirdest things, like ironic stuff like family reunion tees I was all about, and like just really ugly grandma sweaters. That was my little niche for a while. But I think of myself now as a vintage seller, but more of a true vintage collector. It's like I'll collect my true vintage stuff, but I'll sell most of the more like 80s to 2000s stuff.
Do you prefer in-person thrifting or online sniping?
It's changed over time, because like I've been thrifting since like, okay, I won't even lie. My first thrift trip was because of the Macklemore song. Can't lie.
Yeah.
But I was in like seventh grade, and so like none of my friends were really about that. And I was always wanting to go to like thrifts and antique malls, and they're like, "Let's go to the mall." And I'm like, I would rather chew glass, but okay. But yeah, that's kind of why I love it so much, because I started there and none of my friends like to do that. So it was always a place that I could go by myself. And like I'm super outgoing, but I need my alone time. And so
Oh yeah.
when I'm in the thrift with my alone, like I'll put in some headphones or just just dial in on the shirt flipping. I'm like, oh my God, this is heaven.
Yeah, it's very therapeutic. Like, I don't thrift much these days, but I try to, like, at least once a month, like, just get out there and just look. Sometimes it's zero expectations of finding anything, but it's like just going to go and like look through shirts. Like, even if it's all Land of the Free t-shirts, like there's something there's something about being in the racks and just looking through it that it is like, therapy in a way.
Honestly, it was just a little adrenaline. Is there anything better than like pulling just a super good grail or like sniping one for just a mega steal,
Yeah.
I've been into eBay recently just because the thrifts have been dwindling and they're really taxing, and it's been kind of impossible to find stuff now, and especially in DFW. We're both in the DFW area, and there's the reselling market is so saturated. I can't even
So
walk
crowded here.
can't even walk around at their store without knocking into like 6 vintage heads.
Yeah.
When I find my thrift stores that are kind of empty and haven't been touched yet, I'll prefer that. But now, just because of the dwindling resources, I've been going towards sniping and like buying from other resellers, which I hadn't really liked doing before because I couldn't really sell it for much, but I didn't realize that resellers want to do bundle deals. I'm like, oh, cool. And so I just get like big bundle deals from people. And that's kind of been my favorite thing recently too. It's just working with other resellers.
Yeah, that's a great way to get inventory for sure. Like you said, eBay sniping is not dead. Like,
yeah,
my brother pretty much like once a day he'll just text me a eBay link and be like, go now. This old lady just posted this and she has no idea what it's worth, and it's $15 her best offer. And I'm like,
yes,
awesome. And scoop it. So there's definitely a lot out there, whether it's bundle deals or it's online. Even though the thrifts are crowded, there's still great ways to source inventory.
Something that I do want to mention that was kind of an obstacle for me as a trans person selling was signing up for different like marketplaces.
Oh yeah.
It would all have to be under my old name, and I did not want my old name out there. I didn't want people knowing that. I would sign up with my name Bear or Barrett, and they would block my account because they're like, your ID doesn't match. Like, I've gotten kicked out of eBay 7 times.
Wow.
It's odd. But marketplace, I just recently got my name changed legally, so now I can sell on those platforms, which is great.
Yeah. So what is your biggest pet peeve with vintage or just in general?
Oh my God. If you follow me on Instagram, you know I cannot stand a lowballer. I love to cut a deal more than anyone. Like, I will cut something off of like 75% off sometimes. But when I post a $200 item and you offer me $25, I'm going to cry. And people, because of that, now people will send me their lowball screenshots, and they'll be like, someone just offered me $14 on a $250 Grateful Dead tee. I'm like,
Oof.
this is absurd. My other pet peeve is just people, I don't know, they'll buy a t-shirt for $800 and then sell it for $850. And I'm like, okay, good for you. That great strategy, but
your profit margins should not look like that,
Just about like what's the best Instagram picture you can post. Like,
Exactly.
I'm so shocked by, like, if I saw like a really great AOP, I'm obsessed with AOPs. If I saw a really great AOP, I'm like, oh my God, I've never seen that before. But now it's like, I see that 6 times a day because people really just want to post the best picture. I'm like, do you have like a pair of jeans or like a pair of shoes, or maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. I'm much more appreciative of, well, like you said earlier, like pages that aren't just about t-shirts, pages that aren't just about what's hype in that moment. I'll see the same one t-shirt like change hands 5 different times and to these like same few resellers. And I'm just like, what's the point? Like, the real flex is finding an end user for the product, right? Yeah. Like, the real flex is getting it into the hands of someone that's going to actually wear it and own it for a while. Like, I don't know. It's not appealing to me at all to, buy high, sell high
Yeah.
to the same people and then never actually put that t-shirt in a good home.
Yeah, just keep it on the wall and keep passing it down. That's why I really like finding people through like family connections and friend connections. Like that's one of my favorite ways, if not my favorite way to kind of advertise myself and like market myself is just like someone will compliment my shirt in a grocery store, like an old vintage head. And I'm like, I know you probably have like a good Grateful Dead shirt in your closet, but I don't know, just passing that word on. And they're like, oh, I'll tell my granddaughter. She really loves retro clothes. And then that granddaughter will cash out with me. I'm like, God dang, grandma. But like, I understand people wanting to fill just a niche and just do t-shirts. It really just depends on who you're serving, especially with trans people. I'm just reflecting back. Trans people don't have like a lot of money a lot of the time. And so it's not realistic for me and my audience to be buying low and selling high. And it's not realistic to be buying high and selling high. Like it has to be buying low, selling medium for me,
Right.
just to keep it accessible for people.
Yeah, that's a really good point because another qualm that I have with kind of the hype culture surrounding vintage kind of relates to what we call mids versus what we call grails. Like the average Joe is not paying more than $50 for a t-shirt.
Yeah.
As far as I can tell, that is just a fact of life. And so I'm much more interested in mids when it comes to selling.
Mids feed the kids.
Yeah, exactly. And I would much rather find folks that don't know about vintage and kind of educate them and invite them into the fold a little bit.
Yeah, I'm into getting things to their final destination, just knowing that they're going to stay there. Like my twin sister, I let her join my Voodoo Lounge Rolling Stones raffle that I had a long while back, and she ended up winning it. And I was like, is this nepotism? No, she paid for this.
Yeah, I remember that.
But like, I know that she's never going to sell that. And so that's just like a win for me.
How can people find you online and support everything you're doing?
You can find me on Instagram at Bandana Boy Vintage, or you can find me at my website at bandanaboyvintage.com. Most of my items are going to be all on the website, and the top couple of items are going to be on my Instagram. So if you want to snag some deals for the low, that's going to be on my website.
Do you have any final thoughts or words of wisdom for us?
Just be yourself, please. Wear whatever the hell you want, honestly. Like if you want to wear a shirt as a skirt, I don't care. That's kind of why I sell vintage, is just like wear whatever makes you feel good. And trans lives matter. Thanks.
Mic drop. Well, I think that's a great place to end it. Thank you so much, Barrett, for having the conversation with me.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And everyone, go press subscribe right now. Leave a review if you got here. Please, it helps a lot for everyone doing any podcast. So always go do that.
Yes, thank you so much, man. I appreciate that.
Always.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Canned Heat. As always, don't forget to subscribe on your podcast platform of choice so you don't miss an episode. If that platform happens to be Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can leave us a rating too. Okay, so the next episode of this pod is going to be a banger. I don't want to give it away just yet, but I will say that in it, I talked to two people who created some of the most iconic t-shirts of the 80s and 90s. What's even better is that there will be some video content to go along with that episode too. Search Canned Heat Podcast on YouTube and subscribe to the channel for updates. I've also uploaded all the previous podcast episodes if you prefer to listen there. Remember, if you know someone who is building an awesome sustainable business or has contributed to the world of vintage in some way, let me know at Slater Thrifts or at Canned Heat Pod on Instagram. I'm always looking for new guests, and some of my favorite conversations have come about because of listener requests. Well, that's it for this one. I'm Michael Slater. Don't forget to wash cold and hang dry.